Hello, friends, and welcome to our ReZero Episode 25 review and discussion. I'm Silver.
And I'm Robo Oso.
It was an exciting season finale. Let's get started. We begin by seeing what Wilhelm and Emilia are up to. They're with all of the other villagers. Wilhelm is bored. He wants to go kill some people, but before he leaves, he tells Emilia that she and Subaru look similar and refers to them as master and servant. So I'm expecting some BDSM fan art.
God. I also like that when she was going to reply to him, he's already gone, which is the classic kind of anime thing of, she was so in her own mind thinking about Subaru, she doesn't even realize when he's already left the conversation.
And just like cool guys don't look at explosions, cool guys don't wait for responses. We then return to Julius and Subaru fighting Beetlejuice.
And during the fight, I really liked how you got to see all the phantom hands progressively getting closer to Julius and even touching parts of his clothing, which I thought had some really nice, well-directed shots there.
Yeah, we got to see that Beetlejuice was adjusting and wounding him. But anyway, Julius wins out. He does his magic 6-element attack. He wrecks Beetlejuice, knocking him back. Beetlejuice tries to make himself safe in a dome of dirt, but Subaru distracts him by throwing a smoke bomb so that Julius can stab him. Beetlejuice then takes over Subaru's body, but Subaru gets rid of him by talking about returning by death. He summons them both to the witch's realm. We get to see a version of the witch, which was pretty cool, and then she rejects Beetlejuice. She was hoping he was somebody else.
Yeah, and I thought that scene was interesting because I didn't know if Beetlejuice was actually going to be able to see the witch, because it's usually, it's only been Subaru who's been able to see her in this void. So him actually getting to meet with her, or a version of her, was pretty interesting.
It's also a different version than the one we briefly saw before. That one time where she appears to be whispering to him, she appeared lively and kind of seductive, whereas here she looks like a ghost. Beetlejuice then seemingly gives up. He's pretty shocked. He's pissed off that the witch doesn't value his devotion. He's also been stabbed in the chest, so that's a contributing factor. He, in his anger, uses his shadow hands, his authority, to crush the rocks off of the cliff above, and seemingly crushes himself to death.
And Subaru comments that he was Sloth all right, which is interesting as to what happens later. And I also like how he's looking through the gospel and he sees those empty pages, which is, again, another nice establishing shot for what happens later.
We then hear from Phyllis that there's trouble back at the village. We return, and Otto the merchant explains that magical fire stones were accidentally left in Emilia's carriage, so Subaru becomes Keanu Reeves and the rest of this episode becomes Speed.
And of course, all the explosives are under the children.
Of course. Subaru teams up with Otto to retrieve the Firestones and save Emilia and the children. Along the way, we learn that Otto can hear the voices of animals and insects, which is sort of random. I don't remember if this was established before, but maybe it's a spirit power?
And I like how Otto says this won't be easy at all the second as they start to fall off this cliff, and he's not freaking out at all, but Subaru is. And I like how they go over the classic rickety bridge that falls off the second they get out of it.
Yeah, a very sort of Indiana Jones action thing. Then Otto begins to notice that the animals in the forest are running away. Interesting that freaks him out, not going off of a cliff or almost falling into a river.
Right.
But the animals are running away. We're getting some foreboding feelings, and then we see that a large creature's chasing them. It's Spider-Goose. Spider-Goose is somehow after Subaru and Otto.
And for a second, I thought it was the zombie creature in Cabaneri of the Iron Fortress.
Yeah, it did a little, like the silhouette looked like that a little bit.
Yeah.
We then cut back to Emilia and the children, and we see that there's an all-out battle happening. She and the kids are hoping for the best. They're a little worried. Puck reminds her that Wilhelm is the murder god, and we get to see that he's literally cutting through the witch's cult like butter.
So awesome.
We then jump back to Subaru and Spider-Goose.
And I like how Subaru calls Beetlejuice a uselessly hard worker. What about you as Sloth? That's his actual line. So I find it interesting that he just retracts what he said before about him being like, how are you a sloth?
Yeah, he goes back and forth between extremes to attempt to disparage him. Then Subaru bravely stands up to Spider Goose, vows that he shall not pass and hurt Otto. Otto's overcome with his love for Subaru. Subaru's just making everyone wet this episode. Although Subaru then admits that he's just trying to look cool, he doesn't really care that much about Otto. Then, Subaru makes a very curious comment to Beetlejuice.
Yeah, the line is, in what kind of rom-com does someone try to squash their love's heart? I don't know, Subaru, maybe all the anime that feature a yandere character?
Yeah, I mean, it kinda happened in JoJo this season.
And I also like how he just very casually kicks the phantom arm.
Yeah, very weakly. He's just kind of like, I'm brave. Yeah.
That was a shot that made both of us laugh when we saw it.
Yeah. Then they emerge from the forest. They're out in the open, approaching the battle between the cultists and Wilhelm. And Subaru smartly throws out a pot, gets oil all over Spider Goose's face, and then he uses the firepower that he was entrusted with from Julius. He decides that the best way to deal with a spider is to kill it with fire.
Oh, and Beetlejuice talks about how all the things the witch has done for him that he will never forget. And I'm actually very interested to know what were all the things that she did for him. I don't know if we'll ever find out about that.
Yeah, it was curious. He mentions that she doesn't remember them, so it seems that something happened to the witch. So we know that the witch was, prevented from destroying the world hundreds of years ago, so he might be talking about something that happened hundreds of years ago. It's unclear. But we see that the fire wasn't enough, and Subaru has to then throw the gospel to distract Spider Goose, and after he grabs it with one of his shadow hands, Subaru gives him a flaming punch to the face.
And I love how the book is somehow lightly tossed back into the carriage.
Yeah, that was a little bit odd. Seemingly, Subaru's punch is more devastating than a fiery explosion, so he's definitely gotten stronger over the course of the season. Those 5 minutes of training he did with a Wilhelm that 1 or 2 times definitely had its effect.
And I like, too, how now we are brought back to the gospel where he writes Owadi in blood in the book to tell him he's finished. Beetlejuice gets this really mad look on his face and appears to attack the wheel with his phantom arms. But in the process, I don't know if he gets stuck into the wheel, but he seems to disappear and partially scorch the carriage. And I wasn't really sure what exactly happened to him. He just kind of vanished.
Yeah, I wasn't sure whether he attacked the wheel. I thought maybe he was basically giving up and letting go and kind of falling into the wheels. I wasn't really sure, but...
Yeah, it might have been that too.
Yeah, it appears Subaru wins. Who knows if that's the last we'll see of Beetlejuice. They might bring him back. And then Subaru happens upon Wilhelm, who directs him to Emilia, and Wilhelm then delivers a very silly romantic line.
And I also like how everyone in the background is just standing around like D&D figures on a board game field. Like, no one is moving in the background.
Yeah, Wilhelm is the only person allowed to kill anyone.
I also found it interesting how Subaru really parallels with Beetlejuice, how his promise to save Emilia, he's super diligent towards her in the name of love, is very similar to how Beetlejuice acted with the witch.
Yeah, the two of them were devoted to somebody who didn't really appreciate them or understand what they were doing for them. It's obviously not exactly the same thing, but there are parallels there. Blind devotion, doing things for love, really being sort of selfish, lacking awareness. There are just some interesting parallels. Mm-hmm. But from there, we get to see Emilia is back with the kids. She is talking in her head with Puck about Subaru. Puck suggests that Subaru's been leading the forces that have saved her and the villagers, that it makes sense. She then wonders why he's doing everything for her. Then the carriages come to a halt. Subaru dramatically flings himself into the carriage, and he retrieves the firestones. Before he rides away, Emilia asks him why he always tries to save her, and he says it's because he loves her. He then rides away, his plan being to throw the stones inside the rocky cavern beneath the great tree. He throws them in, rides away, and then it explodes, and he and Patrash are thrown away by the blast. Emilia sees it from a distance and then runs after him. Through the smoke, she manages to find him. He then wakes up in a beautiful meadow with his head on her lap.
So I like how she just sat there with him long enough for all the smoke to disappear for about 1 to 2 hours.
He then apologizes to Emilia for him being selfish earlier in the show, and he clarifies that at the beginning of this season, he was only really thinking about himself. He was acting like he would always save her because he wanted to manipulate her into loving him and kind of live in this fantasy. He states that he does love her, though, and that this is the true reason for all that he's done. And then she starts to cry. She reminds him of everything that she suspects is wrong with her, that no one likes her, that she's a half-elf, that she looks like the witch, that she's never really had friends. He reassures her and tells her that for every 10 things she thinks are bad about herself, he'll tell her 2,000 things that he thinks are wonderful. She notices that she's beginning to feel happy, and she feels guilty about feeling so happy. And so he lets her know that it's all right to feel good. He tells her that he's confident that she'll come to love him eventually, and that he reiterates that he loves her, and then she thanks him for saving her.
And wouldn't it be funny if she said she loves Rem?
Well, she should love Rem, right? Rem's better than Subaru. It was a surprisingly positive ending. I figured something terrible might happen at the last minute to set up the next season, but it was just pretty positive. Everything kind of paid off. We got to see Subaru being kind of masterful. We got to see him making her feel good. We got to play up their romance so that it made a little bit more sense than the Rem-Subaru romance, which made way more sense up until basically this episode.
Yeah, I gotta hand it to this show. I had no idea what to expect. I didn't really know anything about this show when I first started watching it. And I usually don't really like plot elements like this where you can come back or time repeats itself, things like that. But especially the episode like halfway where we got to see, Puck as a monster and other things, it just kept making the show more and more interesting to me, and it was just really entertaining to watch. And I just want to see the second season. I'm really excited.
Yeah, and for a show which is mostly sort of a fantasy romance, it was pretty effective, I think, and the art's very beautiful. I loved a lot of the landscapes, and it was just very nice visually. So now that the season's over, what do you, the viewer, think of the finale and the show as a whole? Let us know your thoughts in the comment section below, and like the video if you liked the video, subscribe for more anime and manga reviews and discussions. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.